All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. My name is Paul Connecton. I am our CMO here at Beeswax, and I am really excited to welcome you all to this second session in our 15 Minutes with Beeswax series. I do want to remind everyone that this will be recorded, so if you'd like a copy of it later, we can make that available. And the fun part is the Q&A. So if you could submit your questions via the Q&A feature in Zoom, it's at the bottom of your screen. We'd be happy to answer your questions. And if anyone wants to ask a question on camera, all you have to do is raise your hand, and I can promote you to a panelist, and you can ask Todd a question and have an interaction with him over video. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our host for this session, Todd Keats. He's on our account management team, and he knows everything about bidding and the life of a bid, and I do not. So I will turn it all over to Todd, and he can take you through the life of a bid.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul, and thanks everyone for joining. Really excited to go over this session today. For the Beeswax folks that might be on, this is a classic Beeswax onboarding session that everybody goes through when they join the company. So we thought, why not share it with the world? So just to quickly go over what we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about today, three things. So first is I'm going to go over a high level of real-time bidding basics. I'm sure most of the folks on the line have already seen a lot of diagrams about this, but just a quick recap. Then I'm going to talk about what happens under the hood within Beeswax, sort of what are the different processes that are going on before a bid is actually submitted to an exchange. And then I'll quickly go over, what happens after the ad is served, what happens with the data after that. So let's get right into it. So just to get started with kind of high level of real-time bidding basics. So again, most of you guys have probably seen something like this before, and I'm going to skip over a few details here, but I'll go over the basics. So user goes to a website and there's an ad placement that is available. That ad placement then calls an ad exchange, maybe through pre-bid, maybe through some other integrations, but it does call that ad exchange. The next is the ad exchange will send a bid request to a number of exchanges, Beeswax included, and we'll receive that bid request. Within Beeswax, we have a number of advertisers who've enabled and set up campaigns that may be targeting the parameters on that specific request. So they tell us a bid price. We then submit that bid as a bid response back to the exchange. And then the ad exchange determines the winning bid, and then the ad is served. So again, just high level diagram of RTB. But what we're really going to focus on today is what goes on inside the demand side platform, and in this case, more specifically, what's going on within Beeswax. So let's move to what's going on under the hood here. So this is a high-level architecture slide of what's behind, what's under the hood of Beeswax, and as you can tell, pretty complicated. Though there's actually a lot more going on than even is put in here. Now, much of what I'm going to talk about is similar to other DSPs in the space, but there are definitely some key differences in terms of what you can do with Beeswax. And those parts are really highlighted in yellow in terms of what our customers can customize. So I'm going to go through each part of this process here in a little bit more detail, so you guys have more insight into what's going on. So the first step is Beeswax receives a bid request from an exchange. We're integrated with over 40 different exchanges, and each of them have a slightly different format from which they send us a request. So the first thing that we do is we actually normalize the request in an open RTB format. This way, all of those requests can go through the rest of the chain, and we have a standard format that is Beeswax specific. Next, we'll do an IP to geography lookup for country and DMA. This is typically done through a partnership with MaxMind. So they're doing an IP to geo lookup. Then you can target things like country, DMA, zip code, etc. Now, if that's not, if there is no IP, we're not able to do the lookup for some reason, then we may fall back on the exchange provided value if necessary. After that, we'll do a platform data lookup using Device Atlas. So basically what they'll do is we'll send them a ping with a user agent. Then they will tell us, hey, this is the specific operating system, device type, model, browser. And then all of those things are then targetable within the Beeswax UI. Next, we'll do an ads.text status check. So you guys might be familiar with this for both web and app. We have a sort of an asynchronous system where we're constantly scanning all of the popular domains and app bundles, and then basically determining whether or not they're ads.text compliant. So that process happens here. And then the last thing we do, which is a little bit specific to Beeswax, is we then will filter the traffic to our specific customers based on rules that we've set up in the system for them. Okay, so this is step one. There's a lot of different things that happen, but the key is that we normalize the request from all of the different exchanges. Step two. So this is where things get interesting. So in this step, what we're doing is we are augmenting the requests with segments. And these are both first and third party segments. So, for example, an IAS pre-bid segment or something from Oracle Data Cloud, TrueOptic for CTV, LiveRamp, etc. And then optionally, and again, this is a specific thing to Beeswax, our customers can actually use a feature that's that we call a data augmenter. This is a unique feature that enables some really cool use cases. What actually happens is we send the full bid request to our customers over HTTP, and they can respond with a segment in real time based on any specific parameter in the bid request. So some examples of use cases here. One is weather. So let's say you wanted to target, you had some weather data that you wanted to make available in real time, and you wanted to know, is it sunny right now in Brooklyn, New York? And if you want to target that segment, you could actually append it in real time based on the geo data that's coming through on the bid request. Another is location targeting. So if you have a point of interest database that is proprietary, you can plug this into Beeswax. Another use case we've seen is user scoring. So if those scores are changing frequently, and uploading a segment once a day is not sufficient, then you can use the data augmenter to augment in real time. And then probably more advanced use cases are around custom device graphs. So folks can actually create their own segments off their own device graph using the augmenter in a pretty cool way. So that's the step two, augmenting segments as they come in through Beeswax. Step three. So this is where the bidder applies specific filtering. So a customer will set up a number of different campaigns and line items in the system with targeting and creatives and all those things. And what the bidder is actually going to do is they're going to start to filter those requests. So it's going to ask a few questions. The first question is, does the line item targeting match the incoming request? So, are you targeting a specific geo? Are you targeting a specific segment or operating system or set of domains, whatever it may be? The second question it'll ask is, does the creative match the attributes in the incoming request? So based on creative size, or is VPaid enabled, whatever it may be. The third thing it will do is ask, is the user over the desired frequency cap? If it is, then those line items won't be eligible. If not, then it will move forward to the next step. Fourth is there available budget for this specific ad candidate based on this specific request? And then the last, which is an optional feature, is pacing. So should this request be paced based on the delivery of a specific line item? So after all of these specific steps, then we move on to the next stage, which is based on sort of bid pricing. How are we going to bid for this specific ad request? All right, so we move to the next stage here. So once Stinger, the custom bidder, filters the line items, then goes to a bidding strategy. So requests can be routed to either a hosted bidding strategy, a Beeswax hosted bidding strategy, so something that's actually set up within Beeswax, or it can be a customer's. And this is again where it gets quite interesting with specific customer use cases and customization of the platform. So let's talk about each of those specific options. So the first option is standard strategies. So in Beeswax, you have the ability to set up a few different bidding strategies right out of the box. So this would be flat CPM bidding, cost per click, video completion rate target. And those are just right there in the platform for you to use. The second option is bid modifiers, or some may call it bid factors, which allows you to, in conjunction with a standard strategy, allows you to modify a bid based on any sort of open RTB parameter. So, operating system, DMA, segment, et cetera. So that's option 2. Option 3 is a really, really awesome feature that we released recently called bid models. Basically, this is a multivariate version of bid modifiers and allows for more granular bid price optimization using combinations of factors. So instead of just saying, I want to bid 2x on Apple iOS, you could say, I want to bid $1.50 when the request is Apple iOS in New York City for this specific segment. And then the last and most complicated but most flexible option is our bidding agent. So in this case, we will pass eligible ad candidates to the customer's bidding agent, which is hosted in a separate cloud infrastructure. We'll send it over HTTP with all of the eligible ad candidates. And then customers will respond to us with a line item, a creative, and a bid price. They host the logic in their own infrastructure, and they're the ones telling us the bid. So it's much more complicated, and the use cases are much more advanced. And in some cases, it's not even just bid price. It can be custom pacing, custom creative selection, all sorts of different things that customers can customize in this specific instance. Great. So we've gone over this next step. And once the bid is submitted, regardless of the specific bidding strategy that's used, we will then send a bid response to the ad exchange with the specific ad markup. Great. So the last and final step is to talk about what happens after the ad is served. So here's the data flow. Once the ad is served, Beeswax will add a bunch of event trackers, and customers can add their own event trackers as well, and those event trackers are fired. Then the event trackers are basically sent to Beeswax event servers, and we update a few things. So we're updating budget, we're updating the frequency cap, we're updating our pacing system. We are updating our reporting system, which is then aggregated hourly and made available to our customers. And then in some cases, we may be adding a user to a segment for other purposes. And then we also have the ability to send that data to our customers. So we have a number of different ways to do this. The first is we can send it to our customers in a batch process via Amazon Web Services S3. So we'll just drop data to S3. We can send data in real time to customers over a Kinesis stream or over HTTP. The third is we can make the data available in meta markets, which is a really powerful data visualization tool for our customers. And then finally, this is in a closed beta right now, but we have the ability to actually make this data available in Snowflake. So a new feature that we're really excited about, and we'll be talking more about in the coming months. So that is it. Life of a bid in Beeswax, and obviously this process happens millions of times a second. Really exciting and really happy that I could go through this with you guys. So maybe at this point, I'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. And exactly 15 minutes. So directly as advertised. So we will turn it over to questions. We do have a few in the queue, but I will let anyone jump ahead if they'd like to raise their hand and ask Todd live. But of course, that's not a requirement. So I will dive right in. Question from the audience: do you use any info from the OpenRTB spec related to geography, or do you only use info from the IP lookup via Maxmind?
So generally speaking, we'll use the IP lookup from Maxmind, mainly because it keeps things uniform and normalized. But there are instances where we will actually use what is passed by the exchange. Typically, that's used as a fallback. So the answer to your question is yes, sometimes we do.
All right, another question. Can you give a real-world example, the type of brand or customer who would have the real-time scoring or device graph use case?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say, for example, you're an e-commerce site, and you have a retargeting use case. Maybe you have a customer who's been to your site and added a bunch of data to their cart. You have another customer who just visited once and bounced, and you want to use that score to alter bid price. You actually can do that through a combination of features. So through the data augmenter, and then using our bid modifiers feature, which is pretty cool. So if you think about it, you may score that user who has added, let's say, $1,000 of items into their shopping cart really high, and a user who's visited, it's the first time they visited, they didn't put anything in their cart, you actually score them much lower. So a lot of companies who are starting to use customer data platforms actually have a lot of this data already. It's just a matter of actually plugging it into a DSP that actually supports it.
All right.
Question.
Yeah, great. Another question. So does all this have to happen in X amount of time for my bid to actually be accepted by the ad exchange? So many moving parts, especially if I add my own augmenters. How do you make sure things get processed in time?
That's a great question. So yes, so typically the latency window is about 150 milliseconds, and that's for all of the process from sort of the exchange sending the request and then us responding. Now, typically for the pieces that are customizable, so the data augmenter and the bidding agent, each of those independently need to respond within 10 milliseconds. Now, in some cases, if you're only using one or the other, we might be able to be more flexible on it. But yeah, like I think one of the challenges of using those features is you have to have the teams that can do it. Now, if you look at sort of the product sets that we're releasing to customers, some of the advancements we've had with, for example, bid models, that actually takes out the need to host that infrastructure, and we'll actually do it for you. And so we're sort of making it easier to actually execute on a custom bidding strategy, for example, and you don't actually need to deal with the latency problems.
Great. I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in around how we handle alternate identity solutions. So IDL, just in general, when cookies aren't the thing, how does this process change?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is good timing because we're going to be announcing a few new features next week, which I'll tease out a little bit.
Please do.
We have integrated with LiveRamp's IDL. And so customers, when they upload segments to Beeswax from LiveRamp, for example, those segments will include the LiveRamp IDL. And so, that augmentation piece in terms of, Beeswax augmenting that segment, the IDL would be included there. And then, in the part where I talk about does targeting match, that is when we will do the match to the alternative ID. Now, another example is that we do support the concept of IP address targeting via segments. So you can actually add an IP address as a segment. So that is also supported. So another sort of alternative ID to some extent. And we'll be announcing the support of frequency capping by IP address. And then also there's really some advanced use cases around a custom ID. So if you're a media company, let's say, or you own your own exchange and you're passing your own custom ID, we actually have the ability to segment and frequency cap on those specific IDs if they are coming in on the bid request. So again, this is more akin to a media and tech use case and pretty advanced, but we can support those use cases.
Yeah, follow-up question on that. Will you be able to build audiences made up of IDL IDs for bidding?
Yeah, it depends what you mean by build up audiences. For IDL, we get the IDL passed to us by LiveRamp. We're not then like passing out the IDLs to our customers via logs. So if you have either a first party data integration with LiveRamp, or you're using a third party segment from LiveRamp Data Store, then you can target based on the IDL. Obviously, some of the use cases there around CTV are quite compelling, just given the challenges of audience targeting in CTV. But as we all know, with the third-party cookie going away in a couple of years, the IDL and other identity solutions might become more prevalent, and this might become more and more important.
All right, we'll take just a couple more questions here. Is there any way to host my own models on your platform or integrate via API? Say I build a machine learning model that takes X number of features and outputs my bid amount and type of creative. Can I do that with you? And if so, how?
Yes, you can. So bid models is the way you do it. So basically the way to think about bid models is we allow you to use a pretty significant number of OpenRTB attributes. I think it's something around 40-ish. And you can use the model that you create to upload basically just a simple CSV file that has all of those specific attributes and then a bid price. Now there are some use cases that won't be supported there related to using segments as part of that, but it does solve most use cases. So again, it's very straightforward. You're just putting that model into sort of a CSV format. We can send you the information on it, and then you upload it to Beeswax, and then we're the ones who are actually executing based on what you tell us. And the cool thing is that can actually be a specific bid price, or it can be a bid modifier or factor. You choose. So there's a number of flexible ways for you to do that.
All right. One last question we'll take. Where does the fraud protection happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So fraud protection is in the part that I mentioned around segment augmentation. So we work with a number of different providers, IAS, Moat, et cetera, who are doing anti-fraud. And so, when our customers are utilizing those features, we utilize some of those ourselves. That is when we'll either drop a request because it is deemed fraudulent, or it's predicted that it's fraudulent. So really, right before the request is going through all the other processes, right when on target match is when we drop that. Now, there are some tools that we've enabled actually even before it gets passed to customers, where we'll drop requests we think are potentially fraudulent. So like right up around the normalization time when we do data lookups.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And just before we leave, I do want to tease our next session. So we've had a couple sessions that were very focused on, ad tech and things about ad tech. We're going to have fun with the next one. So a person on our team, his name is Pete Cho. He actually is a competitive mixologist. And because we're all kind of cooped up right now, he's going to show you how to make a killer cocktail in 15 minutes from just the things you have around your house. And I would say, who couldn't use one of those right now? So I will go ahead and send you guys a link you can use to sign up right now for that panel, for that 15-minute session. And please join us. Those who are asking, will there be a recording of this? Yes, absolutely. We will also make this deck available so you guys can peruse it at your leisure. And thank you, Todd Keats. Thanks to everyone who took their time to join today. And I hope everyone stays safe, practices great social distancing, and grows an awesome mustache like Todd. Have a great day.